Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our monthly Lunch and Learn. If you're a first timer, we do these on a monthly basis, one time at 12 o'clock, right around lunchtime for 30 minutes. And we look forward to you joining us in the future. Today, presenting will be Graham Wickham and Stan Faulkner with Faulkner Law Group. They will speak for about 20 minutes. And at the end, for about 10 minutes, we'll do a Q&A. During the webinar, if you have a question that you would like to get answered at the end of the webinar, please go to the Q&A section of your chat box and type your question in there, and we will try to get to all of them at the end. Also during the call, Graham's calendar will be popping up at different times. If you would like to get on the calendar for your year-end review or some planning for 2021, please click on that and you'll get some dates and times that are available to meet with Graham. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Graham.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. As Jeremy mentioned before, we want to make these calls really pertinent to the timing of what's going on, not just in the economy, but maybe what's going on in our lives, maybe some things that are going on in the news. So again, thank you all for being on it. And also, I think on behalf of Stan, myself, all of our team here at Faulkner Law Group and Wickham Financial and Insurance Services, we hope you and your family had a safe, happy, great Thanksgiving, however you spend it. I think it's just important that we all got together during the start of this holiday season during these unique times. So I'll go ahead and jump in again. I want to reiterate it again that my calendar is going to pop up along the bottom of the screen. This is for anyone that is existing clients. Please put down what general time and date works best for you for the end of the year planning, maybe some tax loss planning for your taxable accounts, and also start the discussion of inspecting what we expect for 2020 and then what we expect for 2021. So feel free to go ahead and put that down on a calendar. Any newbies that we have today, welcome. Thanks for being here. What a great way to start off your financial lives in the new year. Put down what general time and date works for you. It's no commitment to work with us, but it's a great opportunity to start out strong for 2021. Today, I'm going to talk about a little bit about how did the markets kind of do as we're approaching the end of the year. I'm also going to talk about some trends, some popular trends like the Santa Claus rally, the January effect, and then I'm going to pass the call along to Stan Faulkner, the Faulkner Law Group, to talk about some really important topics in terms of estate planning, some tips, some things to think about as we're approaching the end and the first of the year legally with your estate plan. So let's kind of jump in. So year to date, give or take yesterday's returns or today's returns, whatever they're going to look like. Think about this. The Standard & Poor's Index, 500 stocks, probably the market when you think about it. That's what we usually view the most to give us a broad gauge of what's going on. That's up 12.5%. If we trickle down to the Dow Jones Industrial, it's up 3.5%. And the NASDAQ, look at that number, it's up 35%. Do you think in the middle of this in March, when we were hitting these lows, that we thought the market would be up this much? Did we really think? Yeah, we didn't. It has been a tremendous year. And I really commend each and every one of you for sticking with the plan, staying the course, when I know at times it's challenging, it's difficult, not just financially if you're in that stress situation, sometimes just emotionally. So I commend you. Over a typical 12-month period, the odds of making money is roughly 75%. Think about that. Also, one interesting stat that came up from FundStrats yesterday was that any time we've been in a year where the S&P index is up 10, 15%, December's has a positive return 100% of the time. And that average return is roughly 4%. Now, keep in mind, I throw these numbers now, but there's absolutely no guarantee that this end of this month is going to be as strong as that FundStrat number implied. There's certainly no guarantee that past performance is going to be emblematic of what's going to happen going forward. That's my political statement for the moment. But I think things look rather strong going to the end of the year and looking into the new year. So let's talk about trends for a second. When we look at market trends. We hear the term like Santa Claus rally or January effect. So let's kind of dig into these. So the Santa Claus rally, if we look at it, it's basically the 5 trading days in the market in December to the end of the year and the first couple days in January. All right. And since 1969, it has yielded a positive return 34 of the last 45 holiday seasons. What a powerful trend it sets. Now, if we look at January, think about January, and this is where it sets the pattern for performance for the rest of the year. As we approach the end of the year, I mentioned early on, if you have taxable accounts, you want to think about tax loss harvesting. It's okay to take losses to offset gains. And you saw the performance on the indices, not to mention some individual stocks in the tech area or the underperforming industrial cyclical area that's now outperforming. You might have some real gains that you want to take or gains that you've taken, and you want to offset those with losses. You can do that generally now. If we wait 31 days, we can avoid what's called a loss sale, and we can buy those securities back. Or in the interim, we can buy like products, but not the exact product, and still and still take those losses in your taxable account, not your retirement accounts. If we think about portfolio rebalancing, that's another part of January effect. So, okay, we got into this tax loss selling, we've generated some cash. Or we get into the new year and we say, you know what, we've really outperformed so well on this kind of stay-at-home trade or the tech trade. That's been the big outperformer. Now the cyclicals are really bouncing up. And now we think we want to balance our accounts. So we buy and sell and we adjust the accounts. Then we think about window dressing. It's basically a terminology for institutions. So at the end of the year, institutions will go in and they will position the portfolio with the best performing stocks in many situations. Now, why are they doing that? Think about the term that I just mentioned, window dressing. They want to look great. They want to show their shareholders when they report what holdings they had, they want to show them that they were all in the right positions that did so well. Now, between you and I, were they in those positions to realize all those gains all the time? Of course not. Maybe, but that's what usually happens. Also, we get into funding your retirement accounts. Some accounts need to be funded by the end of the year. Some go into the new year, all the way up to April 15th, where you might be funding an IRA or Roth. Bonuses might go at the end of the year or the first of the year for your retirement plans at work, your 401k, your 403bs, 457, simple plans, SEP plans. Those are traditional retirement plans that you hear about. So you can imagine with me how much money can come off the sidelines and bolster a positive or some positive momentum going into the new year. And that's called the January effect. It happens every single year, but it's not a guarantee that we're going to have a positive performance. Think about this. We've had such a great returning year. And I think all of us could agree in a year that we didn't think was going to be great returns. So we could have borrowed some of the returns that we were going to get in 2021, but we got it in now 2020. So don't be surprised if we get some volatility here. I think it's natural and it should be expected. 5, 10, 20%. I don't have a crystal ball, but I would expect any of those numbers at any time. Then we think about just good old-fashioned end-of-the-year enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, I don't know how anyone else feels, that 2020 is gone and 2021 is starting. I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited about that. I know we had a great year in our investment portfolios. I've had everyone on the back for being a great team player for that. But at the same time, unfortunately, with the pandemic, with just aging populations, even in my own family, we've had a lot of death and illness. So hopefully 2021 and the vaccines and the treatments will help bolster a more positive year. And I think that's a lot of the enthusiasm too that we can see going into 2021. So kind of what do you do? I would generally say, listen, you want to stay the course. You want to rebalance. You want to think about barbell strategies. You want to have your general diversification, your general allocation. It doesn't matter who's elected or what's going on that year. You really just need to keep with the plan, keep with a solid diversified portfolio. I'm always happy to go into more detail because every situation is going to be different for every consumer and every client we deal with. So make sure you hit my calendar. Go on there. We'll set you up for the end of the year, kind of wrap up the new year plan. And again, if you haven't sat down with us, I hope you do. It's no obligation, but you know what? If we end up working together, what a powerful way to start your 2021. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Stan Faulkner Law Group. They're the legal team that works with us in our office with our clients from a wealth management standpoint. And I do want to leave with this note. When we think about wealth management, you hear that term a lot. And Stan, I know in our estate planning classes that we host, we talk about wealth management. You know, investment planning, investment implementation, allocation, your retirement accounts, you know, these are only one component of a successful wealth management plan. So we want to think about the investments and the retirement accounts or the taxable accounts. We want to think about the risk management strategies with insurance. We want to bring in your CPA, your tax advisor to make sure that you're taking all the deductions, you're getting the credits where you need to. So you're not paying more than what you need to pay to the government. But at the end of the day, it's just as important that you bring in the legal team from an estate planning standpoint, from a legal aspect, to make sure that everything's in place. So again, if you haven't had a chance to sit down with myself and Stan, I would encourage you to do that. But let me not waste any more time. Stan's got a lot of great stuff to pass on. So Stan with Faulkner Law Group.
Thanks, Graham. And I'll be somewhat brief here. I just want to pass on some end-of-year tips or some tips generally about your estate plan. And it doesn't matter the type of plan. These are applicable to each type of plan, whether it's a trust or basic will or something in between. So if we look at those, I think we've got them a little bit out of order, but we'll go through them. And I'm going to tell you the first one up here is have a clear definition of your beneficiaries. And I think don't pay attention to how we've got them ordered, but the first one I always look at is a clear definition of your beneficiaries in your plan. And so what I mean by that is, for example, you want to identify your beneficiaries by class and by name. And so class would be children or grandchildren, nieces, nephews, etc., or perhaps it's a charity. And then you identify who that individual or group or organization is. Bob and Mary, my children, or the St. Jude's Children's Hospital, instead of saying just a children's charity, right? So that it's very clear to your fiduciary who gets the asset and what general group they're in case there's later confusion if one of them passes away, right? So we want to be clear about that definition in your plan. And so if that has changed, and if you've added children, or perhaps you've had a loss and a child has passed, or some other beneficiary has passed, revisit that and further define that group. Or maybe now you become more involved in a charity, and so we want to further define that group if that's part of your giving strategy, okay? Next, we want to provide clear instructions on the bequest. And so what I mean by that is when you go to identify who's going to receive the property and how much, you say specifically what that is. So a common mistake might be, I want to give my grandchildren $10,000. That's a poorly worded bequest, because does that mean I'm giving the class of grandchildren $10,000? I'm giving them each $10,000. And then who is in that class? Maybe you want to leave it as a class group and undefined because you have several children and they are adding kids on an annual basis. And so you want to leave it open, but perhaps you meant to say, I want each of them to receive $10,000 or $10 or whatever it is. So be very specific about that. If it is going to be a class pool of money, identify the pool and the class as a whole. If it is meant to be for each individual to receive an X amount of dollars and you have it very specific in your mind, then make sure that your wording matches what you have in mind so that it does say each child, each grandchild, etc., receives this fund, right? It often gets lost in that, and if you're not specific, it will just be a group gift, and the group itself will split the funds. And I've seen that happen where it's a group gift and it was a pot of money and each person got $10 because they meant for it to be a lot more.
Right.
But after the fact, you can't change it, right? It's just too late. And so we want to be specific about that. Another one is we want to provide clear instructions or reference to our property. And so our property is, you can think of it as anything held in your name. That includes personal items, as well as real estate, as well as cash accounts, whether it's a checking account, a bank account, an individual stock portfolio or investment, or maybe it's an annuity that's paying. Those are all pieces of property, including, you can also include a business in your name is a piece of property. And so you want to be clear about that property and the type that it is and whom or how it's going to be handled, whom it's going to. And one thing that we want to be mindful of, or if you've collected anything over your time, over your life, maybe you have a gun collection, maybe you've collected vinyl records, or maybe you perhaps have intrinsically valuable jewelry in your family, things that your grandfathers passed down, like watches and things like that. And if you want those specific items to be held in the family or go places, you need to list them out. And there's nothing wrong with attaching a sheet of paper to the back of your will, right? So you don't have to have it listed in the will. You can simply write it out, sign the bottom of it, and identify who's going to receive it by name. And that works just as effective. It's also very flexible. So you may not have to redo your will, hire an attorney to change things. You can just write the sheet, because we give things away during our lifetime, or we may sell it or something happens to it. And it's just easier to update that list than it is to change the will. That's a very simple thing to review on an annual basis, particularly as we age and we start handing things to new grandchildren or kids that are of age now to handle something significant, like a family heirloom, a watch, etc. Right? And so you want to update that. Another thing you want to have is make sure that you have backup or multiple backup fiduciaries. Your fiduciary is your executor or your trustee, and that's the person that's going to oversee and carry out your wishes. And so you want to have at least one, and sometimes two, and sometimes you have to update those because it's been a brother or sister in your family, and maybe they have passed or become ill, or they're not capable, or maybe you're going to now, your estate has grown significantly. You want to have your other fiduciary serve as your executive, right? You want to have your financial planner, your accountant, your lawyer, which you can do. And it's sometimes advisable if it's complicated, right? Or if you've got certain family issues and you just don't want somebody squabbling over it, you want somebody independent to do, just make sure that thing is updated and make sure you've got more than one just in case. If something happens to the one person, you've got a backup name. You won't have to redo your entire plan because you've lost a fiduciary in there. Okay, so that makes it easy, and it also keeps you from having to redo the plan year after year if it's not necessary, just because of the fiduciaries now missing. Okay, and then the last thing is we want to have a contingency plan. Thinking about worst case scenarios, and most people don't like to do that, but that's why you hire an attorney too, so they can sit down and be objective and think about worst case scenarios and create the contingency. So what if scenarios? What happens if if somebody passes away? Do we want it to go to their children? Maybe we have a bequest going to somebody. Do we want it going to their children, or do we want it going back into the pot to be further divided out amongst the current beneficiaries? So keep that in mind and have a contingency plan in place in your documents. That also keeps you from redoing them often. If you have some contingency in place, like a contingent beneficiaries, if it's not Sue, then it's Bob, that sort of thing. Or if it's not Sue, it's Sue's children. Or if it's not Sue, then it's going back to the rest of my siblings. That sort of thing is a contingency plan. It's not just a dead stop at the end. So those are the 5 things you should think about, 5 tips in reviewing your plans at this time of the year, 5 things you want to include or have in mind when you're reviewing it and sitting down with your attorney.
Steve, I have a quick question. Yesterday we had the opportunity to sit down with a couple that were inheriting assets, and the minor children were inheriting assets. How should that be addressed as beneficiary?
Yeah, so that's a good thing. And it's a contingency item that we address all the time. And it's children under 18 cannot own property, any kind of property. It doesn't matter what it is. They cannot own a financial account. It has to be a custodian account by a parent or somebody else holding it. And so when you want to leave money to a minor, you need to set it up to it's either going to be in a trust for them, till a certain age, or that you're going to designate a custodian that's going to handle that money for them until they turn 18, 21, et cetera. Otherwise, the parent has to get involved, and the parent will actually have to apply to be a conservator of that money for their own child. That's a court process. It's expensive. It's a hassle to go through the court just to do that to inherit money. So don't create a problem, create a benefit by identifying that custodian in your plan, and you will avoid the whole court process to just set up an account.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you, Stan.
You're welcome.
These
Absolutely.
are great tips for the end of the year. So let's go ahead and open this up to questions and answers. Jeremy, do you want to introduce that?
Okay. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Stan. If you have a question, go to the chat box in the Q&A section and type that in now, and we'll get to that. We'll answer all those questions. Graham, I think we had a couple that came in ahead of time. If you want to start with those and while people are typing.
Yeah, absolutely. First question I saw was what to expect for 2021 in terms of, I'm assuming that question was about the investment markets and whatnot. And I think that's a really big question mark. As I mentioned, I think 2021 looks good from a reopening of the economy standpoint. The underperforming side of the market should start to outperform the outperforming side of the market, like the tech, so on and so forth. Stay-at-home trades might moderate or underperform a little bit, but it doesn't mean it has to be a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised that those two trades probably play more of a role as we roll into 2021. I would expect a 5-10% correction of some means, just because we've had a very good year. And it's kind of like they buy on the rumor, sell on the fact. Buy on the rumor of a vaccine, a treatment, sell on the fact of now we're back, we're getting back in our groove, maybe some semblance or normality in our life. So I think the returns next year in 2021 could be very good, but possibly muted at times as the market tries to figure out what direction it's going to go going forward. I could say more volatility, but I think 2021 was pretty volatile, right? We were down 34% on the S&P at one point, and we're up over 44 odd percent at this. So it's been a pretty incredible year.
Graham, it looks like Mr. Rick Johnson said that you view your view on exchange traded funds being part of the mix in an IRA or taxable account.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about exchange traded funds. Great question, Mr. Johnson. So we think about exchange traded funds or ETFs, right? Very popular. They can be lower cost, they can be more tax efficient, but they tend to be what's called passive investments. So you have kind of two categories, not to get too much in the weeds, and I apologize. You got passive and active. Passive, let's just say it's exchange traded or indexed. It's not monitored as much. It's a portfolio that stays in place. It's kind of putting your foot on the gas and not really slowing down for the curve, right? Just going to take, you're going to take all the lumps and bruises. But when you buy an active portfolio, it could be managed individually, as we do many portfolios, or it could be through a mutual fund, which we have in many portfolios with ETFs. And that's someone always tapping the brakes, trying to slow down, trying to look for the exit if they need to. It can work for you, it can work against you. I think blending the strategies together, a passive and active, and that's what our clients usually enjoy, kind of a blended strategy. You're bringing both philosophies in, and I think both philosophies have strong merit and strong performance over the years. So great question. I hope I answered it.
Graham, it doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to add a couple more to that, if that's okay. Stan, I noticed that we get so many questions. Should I have a will? Should I have a trust? Could I just have a will and no trust, or can I have a trust and no will? Mm-hmm. You want to take a second?
Yeah. So I always call the will as your safety net, and you should have one, right? Even if that's the only part of your plan, you should have one, because it allows you to dictate who gets your property, and it takes that control away from the state. So Georgia already has a plan for you, and there may be people you don't want. So draft that will. Whether you need a trust or not is up to you, and it depends on what you want to try to do long-term with the asset, if it's something you want to control for a long time, if you want to make sure people avoid the probate process, or if you've got, minors that you want to take care of for college, et cetera, or, make their future a little more brighter within your control, then a trust is what you want to do. Or maybe you've got charities that you want to give to and you want to give to them after you pass, then the trust is what you want to do. So it's kind of up to you, but you definitely need a will in place, even if you have a trust, and without it, for sure, just so that you have some control over your own property in the future and not letting somebody else control it. What goes along with that is all the time is we need to make sure that our beneficiaries are set up correctly on these accounts that we want outside of our will. And so, or if they're going to fund a trust, you need to make sure that those are allocated correctly so as not to, submarine your own plan or to do things for minors that you don't anticipate doing. So we talked about this before. People always put minors as beneficiaries on accounts because they think they're taking care of them and they've created a problem by mistake. And so make sure those things are correct and they benefit the plan and don't take away from it.
Great point. No, great thing. Lastly, I just want to take a moment and point out the calendar again, not to beat that up, but I think we're going to be reaching out to any of our existing clients that are on the call. That you're going to hear from us to set up your end of the year, first of the year planning. So we look forward to getting with you on that. If you're kind of new to the call, you're new to Wickham, fantastic. What a great way to start the new year off strong. So don't hesitate to get on that calendar and we'll meet with you at the end first. We'll meet you wherever you want. We're doing virtual calls, in person. You can see me, not see me. We can just have a telephone call or we can meet in person. We are here to meet you wherever you feel the most comfortable during these, again, still unique times that we're in. Lastly, I want to wrap this up with a point of gratitude. I want to thank each and every one of you for not just being on this call, for really just being such an important part of our lives. Hopefully, we're an important part of your life. And I hope wherever the holidays take you, I know it's Christmas next. I hope it's safe for you. I hope you have a tremendous one with your family. I know we'll get out of whatever we're in sooner than later. But all that aside, I just wish each and every one of you the safest, happiest holiday that you can as we go into the new year. Bless you and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.